On the Go Media proudly presents Between the Ropes with your hosts, Colt Powers and Hunter Dietz.
Welcome back to Between the Ropes. My name is Hunter Dietz. This is Colt Powers, and today, very special guest for you, courtesy of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in the Gable Museum in Waterloo, Joe Malenko. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Doing great.
First off, your career starts, I believe, in 1978. Is that right?
It depends what you pin as my career start. So I really started refereeing when I was 17 years of age. So it would have been 1973.
Oh, okay.
When I started doing some refereeing down in Florida, and I was refereeing up in the Carolinas at the time. Flair was up there, Steamboat was up there, my dad was up there. A lot of the boys, Wahoo at the time. So I cut my teeth. I cut my teeth refereeing, but I'd been around the business all my life. I mean, frankly, I got into business in 1956 because that's when I popped out of my mom and I said, "Ta-da!" I think I was wearing tights. I didn't have knee pads because they didn't make them that small. But
Sure. But you don't start wrestling under the Malenko name, right? Your first in-ring name is Karl Gotch Jr. Is that correct?
No, I mean, I wrestled a little bit as Joe Sims, and I was I wrestled one time as Matt Burns. I was Joe Sokoff. Yeah, but when I really started was when I had a run in Mexico City, and I went down to Mexico City as Karl Gotch Jr. because Karl was training me before that. I mean, I trained almost 7 years with him, not almost. And then he sent me down to Mexico, and he asked if I wanted to take his name, so I took the name Karl Gotch Jr.
Very cool.
Well, and so what did the Mexican crowds think about, Karl Gotch, obviously a very big name, and now here you are coming in as Karl Gotch Jr. Is that a lot to live up to?
Well, I didn't live up to it.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's funny because, as the story goes, I had a magazine article out of one of the, decent-sized periodicals that came out of Mexico City, and I was all proud of myself. It's the first time I'd ever been in the paper or in a magazine. And so, I'd even brought down a sax with me because I was attempting to learn sax. I had a buddy of mine who was a phenomenal jazz saxophonist. So he was teaching me how to play sax, so I brought my sax down there. So they took pictures of me playing a sax, and then, a bunch of other pictures with Karl and I and stuff like that. And so it was this nice spread in this magazine. It was all in Spanish, and my Spanish was minimal at best. It was only years later that I had a buddy of mine look at the magazine. He goes, he kind of had this look on his face like, wasn't real good. And I said, why? What's the matter? He goes, well, they said you weren't that great. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I wasn't, but I had a good time. I mean, I was cutting my teeth as a ring performer at the time. And then also I was thrust into the middle of, that style, the Lucha Libre style, which was so different than I was used to. I mean, just how you take tackles and do so many different things that are, kind of off the beaten path from how we work here in the States.
Yeah.
So I didn't quite gel, but I had a good time. I mean, I had some decent time in the ring, but I had a great time to kind of set the tone for where I would head. And after I got done with that, that was 1978.
Okay.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up because, wrestling the different styles and in front of the different crowds and everything, because a lot of what I have here is you're wrestling in Japan, which, as we've heard from a lot of different people, is a very different crowd from an American crowd. Can you tell us, getting to work in Mexico and some in the United States, working in Japan, how is that different as a performer?
So there's a lot of differences in the various components of things. So when you're in the ring, it's a more wrestling, or it used to be. I mean, things have changed over these decades, but it used to be a more legitimate's not the correct word, but it's close. It used to be a more legitimate style. You were playing, and me in particular, because I was a wrestler, I was playing off of my wrestling background. I was playing off of my submission background as a submission guy under Karl. So I could bring all that to I could bring all that to Japan, and it fit. It was a nice, gelled real well. Here in the States, people would have looked at me and they would have sat on their hands most likely. But in Japan, it was very much appreciated. If you were a combat sports guy in Japan, you were revered, you were respected. You didn't have to be. The other part for me was I didn't have to be 6'6" and 250 pounds. I could be me. So I was a technician. I was a legit wrestler. I was a submission guy, and I could apply that as my trade when I got into the ring in Japan, where I couldn't really do that in the States. The great thing about Japan too was everybody was going through. So it wasn't like I was missing anybody. I wasn't missing wrestling anybody here in the United States because all those guys were coming overseas. We had everybody there. So I had a chance to work against a whole bunch of guys. Japanese style was, as I described, just a little bit more wrestling, a little bit faster paced, a little bit more intense.
Stiff, is that a good word?
What's that?
Wrestling stiff, is that a good way to put it, or?
Solid, wrestling solid.
Solid.
There's sort of a difference between stiff and solid. If somebody stiffs you, they nail you. They're solid with you. It just, it takes on a different appearance. It looks more like it should look. Okay. I mean, I can throw something at you and it'd be solid, but you're not gonna be waking up the next morning, heading to the ER.
Gotcha. Sure. Okay.
And it was a solid working environment. And it was faster paced, and it relied more for me on my wrestling skills and my ability to do the submission stuff. And I could work in and out of all that stuff. So I was viewed as a technician. Just like in Mexico, I was a technico. Rudo technico. So I was a technician over in Japan, and I enjoyed that. And I didn't have to worry about working against, not having the opportunity to work against all these great guys here in the States because they were all coming over there.
That's awesome.
Well, yeah, and something about your namesake and your family that I want to get into too is you mentioned you were a technician and you were known as a technician. I feel like that kind of goes for the Malenko name as a whole, because you think of your brother Dean Malenko, very much known as a technician. I don't know much of Boris Malenko, your father, but I have to imagine also quite the technician. Can you tell us?
Not really. No, he was a different sort. My dad was a very traditional heel.
Okay. Okay.
And his the stuff that he had to rely on as far as moves, actual wrestling moves, he limited. But what he did, he just made it look so solid, so believable, and people wanted to kill him. He once was in a car with Ric Flair, and Rick was just starting into the business up in the Carolinas. And Rick tells the story. He says, he was asking my dad a bunch of questions. And my dad pretty much said, "Look, stick with me, kid." One of those kind of things. Stick with me, kid. I'll teach you how to make them laugh. I'll teach you how to make them cry, and I'll teach you how to make them want to kill you. And he could do that. He could get in the ring, and he could have the light brevity kind of driven stuff where he would do almost Three Stooges type things, which were kind of goofy, but it worked for him, and the crowd would laugh, and everybody. And then he turn the switch, and he'd become the penultimate bad guy, and he would have crowds wanting to knife and beat the shit out of him and not let him back into the dressing room, and attempt to kill him, which happened in Richmond, Virginia, where Bob Orton Sr. had to come out of the dressing room and take him, grab him and pull him back in, otherwise they would have killed him. He was slit wide open along his side. He had a long scar from the side all the way along his ribs. Wow. Yeah. People it was real. I mean, it was as real gets back in the day.
Yeah.
So growing up, being the son of such a famous wrestler, are you getting to hang around all of these other wrestlers when you're growing up? Is it kind of like a growing up in the circus type thing?
You put it as best as I could have put it. It's a circus environment. I used to tell people, my house when I was a kid, it was like geeks and freaks. Every our neighbors would look outside and they'd see Lord Littlebrook and Sky Lolo coming. These little guys who I thought were my buddies because they were my size. I used to want to go sledding with them, and I thought my dad was bringing them over for me to play with. They were grown men. They were just my size. And then all of a sudden the Kentuckians would show up, or some other guy who was 6'10", 7 foot tall. I mean, it was a circus, but it was an amazing circus. And the thing is, when you grow up in the business, I mean, my dad was my dad, and there was nobody who could replace my dad. But But alongside of that, I had secondary fathers, and I had 100 of them, because all these guys were pretty good to me. They all treated me real well. Wahoo and, just, I mean, everybody and anybody. I was Larry's kid. I sat in the dressing room in Madison Square Garden at the old Garden, and let me make sure my phone's off. And I'm sitting there, and I got Bruno Sammartino, I got Bobo Brazil, I got Wahoo coming in and out. My dad was there. I mean, I was with the best of the old breed, the old guard, and I've been with the best of everybody since then, until recently when I pretty much stopped and I just hang around all the old guys here in town, guys like Jerry Briscoe and Brian Blair and
Sure.
Steve Kern.
Well, and Jerry comes up a lot on the show because we get to talk to him, and he's a fun guy to talk to. But he'll tell a lot of stories about the old days and the people that he would be around in the 70s and 80s. Do you have some people that when you first met them, and maybe because of the way you grew up, it's not the same, but do you have some people that when you met them in your career, you're like, oh my God, like that's Ric Flair, or like that's, was there ever that for you, or was this just kind of a secondary family?
Kind of a secondary. I mean, it wasn't kind of. It was a secondary family. I mean, there's a closeness that exists in the wrestling business. It's everybody used to use the term dysfunctional. It's used less now than it used to be, but back in the day, everything was dysfunctional. We were, the wrestling business and the guys in the business. It's one giant, big dysfunctional ass family, but it's a family. I told somebody this recently. So I was a cop. I was a deputy with Hillsborough County, and one of many few things that I've done. So they were having a motorcycle gang, a law enforcement motorcycle gang event over on the beaches, and a couple hundred guys from different places all come together on their motorcycles, and they're all Leos. And they asked me, a couple of the guys asked me, they said, hey, because I was with the agency here in town, they said, hey, do you think you can get some wrestlers? And so I called Steve Kern. He was running the Florida school for the WWE at the time, FMW I think it was. And Steve got a bunch of guys together. They all came over. They wrestled for us. We had some good people. Even Steamboat came. Ricky came at the time. And afterwards, the neat thing was the cops that I was friends with, they all came to me afterwards and they said, we got to tell you, we thought we had a close-knit group, but we pale in comparison to you guys. Because they saw it. They saw that camaraderie. They saw that tightness of this group of guys who don't look like a family, look anything but a family, but we stayed close back then. We still stay close today. I just had lunch with Jerry recently, this week.
Yeah. So, well, and getting back into your career a little bit with your family, you talked about how wrestling as a whole is like one big family, but your biological family as well. I mean, your brother Dean Malenko, you guys tag teamed together.
We did
for a while there. Can you tell us? Was that exciting for you, or is it kind of like, oh God, I got to do it with my brother, No,
well, I mean, it was neither. I mean, it's not exciting is kind of too strong a word. I mean, I was pretty jazzed about having the opportunity to get in the ring with him and work against him, because we did that. And Baba, it was a brother versus brother match. Baba was, Giant Baba was one of the commentators, so that was kind of neat. You hear his voice in the back, very distinct voice. And then, just the opportunity to tag with him, just to be on the road with him, have a chance to, continue to bond his brother. That was pretty neat. But I wasn't excited about it. I just enjoyed doing it. I didn't get, being around the business your whole life, you tend not to get too crazy about stuff. And even with guys that are bigger than life, you just kind of take it in stride because, it's just nothing new. I mean, I had all these people around me from the day I was born.
Sure. Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. When you guys were tagging together, though, you got the opportunity to work with great teams, one of which I want to point out, Nikita Koloff and Ricky Steamboat. From a wrestler's perspective, I think we've heard from Flair and from Sting and from all these people, Ricky Steamboat is one of the best people to get in the ring with. What was your experience working with Ricky like?
It's the same deal, you know. I mean, and when you say, you know, like if I was ever really impressed with somebody when I met them the first time or when I had a chance to work against him, I mean, he was probably one of the few guys. Him, Dynamite is another guy. When
Sure.
you get in the ring, you're standing across from them, and you go, oh, that's Ricky Steamboat, or oh, that's Dynamite Kid. Yeah, I didn't get crazy about it, but you know, little thing in your head goes, shit, I'm in with somebody pretty damn good. Yeah.
No.
So I enjoyed working against him, and he was a night off, as they say in the business.
I can completely believe that. You worked with a lot of great teams, the two of you. How long did you guys tag for regularly?
Well, I don't know. We're probably 6 or 7 years, something like that. Maybe that long.
Did you ever hold any tag titles or anything together, or?
We did for like Global Wrestling, which was a an offshoot deal down in Florida. Global Wrestling Alliance. It was actually a company. It was on the penny stocks for a while. We ran some shows, but didn't really go anywhere. It was hard to. It was always hard to take an independent and drive it to where it became something of substance.
Well, and kind of a.
But we never, in mainstream wrestling, WWE, WCW, all these. Yeah, we were never title holders.
Well, you did work for a couple of the mainstream companies, though, and you mentioned taking something small and independent to something bigger. You worked for ECW, and especially at the time, I've got down here November of '94. ECW is a very small regional promotion, correct? Before it became kind of the cult phenomenon that it was going to become. What was your time like working in ECW and working with the likes of Sabu and Taz?
I mean, it was an interesting place because the place was on fire the minute you walked in that joint. I mean, that arena and that crowd, it was a setup for having just great matches, because they got behind. You had to have a good match, but if the match was good, that crowd was always on the edge of their seat, sort of thing. My brother had, I think he had a series against Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah.
But some of his matches, him and Eddie, I mean, barn burners.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy stuff. I mean, I just came in and out. You got to keep in mind when I talk about me, when you talk about me, when anybody talks about me, this was just a part of my life. I mean, it's been in my life since the day I was born, but it's just a part of my life. I've done a lot of other things outside of the wrestling business. I never really wanted to be full time. And as I say that, if at some point in time somebody would have offered me a really good, if WWE had called me and said, hey, we got your brother up here, we'd like to bring you up and offer you a really decent contract, I might have moved on it. But just short of that, I did it. I did this as an aside. I'm a pharmacist. I was doing real estate stuff. I was, helping do some movie stuff. I mean, I've been all over the place. I've got like ADHD, kind of, sort of, but not really. Well,
and so is that maybe part of the reason why you didn't want to go full time? Because a lot of the people, we hear, they say that all they want is to go as much as they can, as hard as they can. They don't even pay attention to anything else. But to be kind of multidisciplined, and we saw this when we were talking to Josh Barnett too about being multidisciplined in a lot of things with combat sports. I almost feel like that gives you a better focus when you get to wrestling, because then it's all you're focused on in that moment. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, it is true. When I probably cherished my moments in the business a little bit more than the average guy who was doing it all the time. It's like anything else, right? If I give you steak one night, you go, wow, that's steak. And then, if I give it to you every night for 2 weeks, eventually you're looking at me going like, yeah, that's steak.
Yeah.
For me, it was, it's steak. I'm in the ring with, the Bulldogs. I'm in the ring against Stan Hansen. I'm in the ring against Dynamite Kid, and I matches against Randy Savage. I matches against Bob Orton Sr. Those were freaking great.
So when you think back on your career and all of the different matches put together, is there anyone, singles or tag, that comes to mind as this was my favorite match in my career? For
me, no. There there are multiple matches that I enjoyed. There are a couple that I was, and the only way to put it is I was either I or the match or both were the drizzling shits.
Yeah.
And you can beep out whatever you need to beep out. I I had things that I favored and I had things that I didn't, but not one particular thing. But then if you look at the fans, the fan base and kind of the the historical people in wrestling, they all point back to the match between myself and my brother and the British Bulldogs. That's like the match that will haunt me until the day I die, in a good way. And kind of like, okay, well, I had there was more to my career than just that match. But it's the one, even when I talked to Davey Boy's kid, Harry.
Yeah.
Harry Smith. Yeah, when I talked to Harry, I was at dinner with him and Diana Hart and his mom and a few people and TJ and Natalie and stuff, and they said, yeah, that was like the match. That was that was our favorite match. And I can't get away from that match, which isn't a bad thing. But there was more to my career. There's
Sure.
more to the stuff my brother and I did than just that match. But yeah, that was a good match.
Yeah, well, for sure, for sure. Was there ever, you mentioned if WWE had called you up and offered you some crazy contract, you would have thought about it. Was there ever any talk about when Dean goes to WWE about you going?
No. Because my brother, you got to remember when my brother went to WWE, he came out of WCW, and it was the whole WCW, WWE thing that was going on at that point.
Yeah.
And so my brother left out to head on up there with Chris Benoit, with Eddie Guerrero, with Perry Saturn, as their crew. I wasn't even in the mix. I wasn't in any of the discussions, and at that point in time, I was full bore into pharmacy and so many other different things around cancer care in particular. I've been in the oncology field for the longest of times.
Well, and you bring that up. I do want to. We'll get back to the wrestling here in a minute, but I do want to ask, because I think it's good work you're doing. What exactly is it that you're working on in the fields of oncology and pharmacy and all of this stuff in the medical industry? What have you been doing?
So years ago, almost 30 years ago now, a little bit better than that, I started a medical communications company, and what we do, or what we've done, is we do educational events for pharmacists, physicians, nurses, and we help with promotional materials and educational stuff coming out of the pharma company. So we work with pharma companies, they fund it, we develop programming, we put it out there, we work with experts in different fields, and in oncology, across solid tumors and hematologic malignancies like leukemia and stuff like that. So we develop programming, we push that out. It's funded by pharma, and we've done that for years and years and years on end. But I also personally have kind of focused in on looking at areas of intense need in the profession. So way back when I started doing MedCom, I realized that pharmacists really didn't have a significant role in the healthcare process for patients in cancer care. So we pulled together a bunch of pharmacists and kind of focused in on making pharmacy a more important part of the cancer care team. And eventually my efforts led to the foundation of what became HOPA, which is the Hematology Oncology Pharmacy Association. So now the association here in the United States, which is the association of all pharmacists who practice in cancer care, that's called HOPA, Hematology Oncology Pharmacy Association, and that stemmed from the founding of that by myself and a couple of other pharmacists. I also worked in geriatric oncology and cancer care for the older adult with a group of physicians, one who was a key geriatric oncology physician in the world. His name was Lodovico Balducci. And we formed the Geriatric Oncology Consortium. We did studies looking at older adults with cancer. And then we also lobbied with a number of organizations on the Hill. And then we also worked with the FDA to develop some more targeted approach to how you deal with older adults with cancer, because it's different than dealing with a younger person. Lots of stuff there. So we were missing the boat there. I kind of jumped in with a bunch of people, and we started moving the needle a little bit. And I'm doing that now with what they call personalized medicine or targeted therapies. A lot of the new drugs coming out have targets, genomic targets, that they, that you basically match. If you've got if your tumor is sequenced and you have a biomarker, and that biomarker can match up to something that a drug is targeted to, then you have a targeted therapy instead of the way that it used to be, where they just used to give you poisons and hopefully they kill the tumor before they kill you, kind of thing. So
Sure.
we've, I've been involved in various aspects of cancer care, just trying to, they say move the needle, make things a little bit better for patients and continue the process to where we get to a point where, we're just doing a lot better than we've done in the past. We make baby, there are baby steps in how care develops. There's no big revelation, no big curative thing yet, but we make, like pancreatic cancer, it sort of always has been the death sentence, but little by little, we've gotten people a little bit more extension on their lives. There's some new drugs coming out that might do really well. So I'm involved in that pretty heavily, less now than I was. I just turned 70 years old, so I'm, kind of on the downside of that part of my career too.
Well, hey, the more research, who knows? Maybe you don't have to. You could live till 130, for all we know.
I don't want to live to. I've lived 130 years already in my life.
Sure, I believe it. Cancer back to wrestling. That's going to be a hard segue. All right.
Well, I've watched some of the wrestling. I've watched some of the wrestling in the different organizations, and some of it is pretty cancerous.
Okay, there we go. All right.
I do have a little question. So, being able to do, you said you worked with police, you did police work, you've done pharmaceutical, worked in cancer research. How were you able to kind of prepare your body if you went from wrestling and to into some police work for a while? Did you bounce around, or did you just wrestle for a while and then go do?
I've always done 3 to 4 to 5 different things at the same time. It's just my nature. That's why my daughters, sad to say, that's why my daughters barely saw me as they grew up. I didn't learn much about that work-life balance until until I got much older, and then went, shit, I probably should have been around more. But I was busy. I thought I needed to make a fortune. That was the other thing too. The metric, the success metric for society is that you have a lot of money, you have fancy cars and a big house and stuff like that. You don't understand until later on that that doesn't mean crap.
Yeah.
Were you able to stay fairly injury free then? Bouncing
I was pretty lucky. I worked very hard at it though. I mean, when I learned to train, so number one, I learned how to train under Karl Gotch. Karl, besides being this consummate catch can guy who sort of laid the groundwork for all of submission wrestling, mixed martial arts, between Karl and Billy Robinson. Gotch was an amazing trainer. Physically, just to be in shape for wrestling, he was the best of the best. And I always stayed in shape. I mean, there was hardly a day where I didn't do 500 squats before I went in the ring.
Oh wow.
Because I never wanted to lose that side of me, which was if I didn't have gas in the tank, I couldn't do crap. That was Karl's big thing. You can have a Rolls Royce, but if the tank is empty, you're just sitting in a garage somewhere. You're not going anywhere.
Right.
So he pushed the envelope when it came to being in shape, and I'm talking about the kind of shape where nothing phases you. You can be on the mat for an hour and you're just kind of going through the paces, and without breathing hard and sucking wind.
Good ring shape to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for legitimate mat purposes, not just in the wrestling ring as a pro. If you're really going at it on the mat with somebody, I mean, we had world gold medalists coming through, world champions coming through. I'm as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid, I was going against guys like Khosrow Visseri, the Iron Sheik, when he came over, and he was multi-time national champion of Iran. Didn't make it to the Olympics, but he was part of the AAU program here in the States, and he was a strong man. He was older than me, so you had to have the wherewithal to go, and the only way you could do that is by training your ass off.
I would not want to get into a shooting match with the Iron Sheik. That does not sound like a good time to me. He'd take me from here to Tuesday. You mentioned though that you've had some different people come through, and there's a training side to your career. You've been training people both professionally and in the amateur catch wrestling style as well. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in that and how long you've been doing it.
On the training piece, I mean, I've been training people since, again, probably the mid '70s. My dad started a school. It was a Malenko Wrestling Academy, which sounds fancy, but it was a back room of a old judo school at one time. At one point, it was in the shed, a big shed of a guy's house out in the Boondocks, and then we moved into a industrial park called Dabbs Industrial Park, and had one of their warehouse things. But we trained guys from the mid '70s on out, and we trained a lot of guys. I mean, a lot of the guys that came out of our school went on to do well. Some had great careers. Some had careers, whether they were great or not. They had careers. They made a living at it. Everybody. There's a lot of wrestling schools out there, and everybody always says, "Well, this wrestling school, that." I said, if you can go to a wrestling school and they've actually put guys into the business, guys who have made a living in the business, then you're going to the right school. If you go to a wrestling school and they've never placed anybody, nobody out of that school has ever made it into the bigger organizations, either here in the States or in Japan, then what are you spending a couple $1,000s for? Go have fun if you want to have fun, but don't expect it to become a career. But we worked guys hard. We knew what we were doing, and my dad had a pretty good reputation, so he was able to place. Our school was able to place, Kane, guys like Kane, guys like X-Pac, 1-2-3 Kid, Sean Waltman, Tugboat.
Oh wow.
Mark Miro, John, he was Johnny B. Bad back in the day.
Yeah.
Gangrel.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, the list. We trained. I mean, we had Bob Orton Jr. come through. I helped train at the very beginning. I helped train Blackjack's kid, Barry Windham.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So I mean, yeah, if you go through the list of people that we touched at some level, and I'm not talking about. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay. All right. Just want to double check.
We weren't pedophiles or anything.
Yeah, okay. All right. Good to know. Well, talking about this long list of legends that you've been involved with or have touched in some way, I do have here in my notes. I didn't even remember this. I just went through the story about a year ago, and I didn't remember this. But during the Chris Jericho Dean Malenko feud on Nitro, you come out. You're a part of a segment, correct?
Yeah, that was terrible, but it was fun.
Well, now why was it terrible?
You know how many times guys made fun of me because Chris Jericho literally beat the crap out of me with a piece of cardboard. So he had like a thing on an easel. It was a piece of cardboard he had on an easel, and eventually, the gimmick eventually he turns on me and he hits me with that card, and I had to take a bump off of the cardboard. And I have people to this day that still make fun of me because I hit the canvas off of being hit by cardboard.
He couldn't have shot for a leg or put you in the walls or anything off the.
I wish he had done something else. But
man.
He hit me with a piece of cardboard and I had to sell it.
Instead, you sold the cardboard. What a shame.
Yeah.
You.
Some people will tell you. There's a few guys will tell you that I never sold much of anything. So just me selling the cardboard was probably a plus.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You look back at the record of your career, and you've sold for cardboard.
He wasn't a good seller guy, but he sold that cardboard.
Yeah. How did all that come about? Like, did Dean give you the call and say, "Hey, we need you"?
Yeah. There was a program between my brother and Jericho, right?
Yeah.
And Chris. And so my brother was out of the picture for a while. I can't remember if Jericho put him out for a bit or I don't remember exactly what led to me then coming in because I was the only, my dad wasn't around to say, hold up the family name. My brother was out of the picture. So that was the gimmick. Okay, so Chris is going to be on TV and he's going to be talking bad about the Malenko family and about my dad. and he knew that my dad wasn't going to show up, and my brother wasn't going to be around, so he could say whatever he wanted. And then all of a sudden, I come out walking out during the WCW event, and this Joe Malenko, and hey Joe, hey shooter, don't mess with me, and I'm going to hit you with a cardboard, and you're going to take a bump.
That's a fun pitch. That's
yeah.
I can only imagine. That was a lot of fun.
He might as well have just gone.
Yeah.
I hit the ropes and fall and go over the top of the ropes.
It makes me wonder though, because I'm looking at your resume here for your whole wrestling career, and I don't even have all the other millions of careers that you've been a part of and impacted, but just wrestling. You have had several matches. I don't know, have you ever officially retired from being a professional wrestler?
Well, there's no official retirement, no, but I've my body dictated that I stop or slow down significantly and then eventually stop. There's a couple things. One is I always watched the older guys back when come around and come into the dressing room and sit around while the matches were happening, and they were just kind of hanging around. I always said to myself, you're not going to do that. You're not going to be one of these hanger-oners who just wants to come around and still be part of something that you're not part of anymore. So I swore to God that I wouldn't do that, and I kind of broke that a couple times. But in general, I stay away from things. I'm not one of those guys that comes to every event here in town and I'm in the back in the dressing room going, hey everybody, remember me? And then I also always told myself that when I felt that there was a point where I couldn't do what I needed to do in a ring, that I was not gonna get in there and embarrass I've embarrassed myself even when I was capable. I embarrassed myself at times, but I wasn't gonna intentionally go down the path where I knew that I couldn't perform anymore at a certain level, but I was still gonna get in there and look like a piece of crap. I just wasn't gonna do that. It's about, I'd rather bow. It was that old thing back in the day, where you'd rather die young than leave a good-looking corpse.
That's right.
Kind of that same philosophy with wrestling. I'd rather die out of the business and have people remember me as somebody who could work a match, as opposed to, oh, that's so sad looking at him now.
Well,
he has to wear a shirt and long pants because he doesn't want to show what used to be muscles that are now wrinkles. And he can't hit the ropes, and he can't take a bump, and he can't take a backdraft, and he can't do anything. But he's in there because he's can't let it go.
He's going.
I just didn't want to be. I didn't want to be that guy.
Well, and I'm not. It's going to sound like I'm throwing shade at Ric Flair, and I'm not. But Ric Flair had a last match just a few years ago, and
he did.
And he sold out the building. I mean, he sold a lot of pay-per-views. I bought the pay-per-view. You could make a lot of money off of doing Joe Malenko's last match.
No, well, number one. So you're talking Ric Flair. You're talking Joe Malenko. Look, I know my place in the business. I was never a superstar. I was a mid-card guy at best. Every once in a while, I stepped up to a better match or stepped down to an opening card thing. I was fine with that. People nowadays, they talk about enhancement talent. They talk about this, and actually, when I hear anything other than you just being one of the boys, to me, it denigrates who you are, and it denigrates your practice of the business when you're out there doing whatever you're doing. There's no enhancement talent. There's no jabronis. There's no nothing. You're one of the boys. If you wrestle, you're one of the boys, and you're just out there trying to have a good match. But there are tiers of, there are tiers, and I'm not talking tears. Sometimes there's tears, but sometimes there's tiers, Tiers. And I'm not at the level of Ric Flair. I'm not the level of 273 other guys. And for them to have a last match and play off of their name, that's fine if they want to do it. Even if I had been them, I wouldn't have done that. If I can't, it's like anything. I mean, why would you want to do something that you can only do 50% as well as you used to do at best?
Yeah.
And have anybody sit there and go, oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
Because that's what people do. I mean, there's going to be people who go, yeah, I'll buy a ticket, and then afterwards everybody's like, oh, that was so sad. Oh my gosh, did you see him? Yeah.
Well, so then as a wrestling fan today, do you still keep up with any of the product or the last? No, not at all.
No. When I say that, I mean I catch odds in it. I catch bits and pieces.
Yeah.
in general, from what I see, it's a product that I'm not particularly fond of. But this is another, this is another Joe Malenko deal. I talk about the fact that it's really preference. I mean, it's not right, wrong, or indifferent kind of stuff. People say, well, that's just, this isn't good, or that's, well, you don't like it, but doesn't mean it's not good. It's just that you don't like it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: when you don't like something, but it still sells out Wembley Stadium in 2 hours, or they're still selling out WrestleMania at $2,000 for the average ticket or whatever the heck it is. That's spilled milk, man. If you're, I mean, you're now you sound like an idiot.
Yeah.
Yep.
I used to get on the bus in Japan, and you would talk to Abdullah Butcher, and he wouldn't give, in the day, he wouldn't give Hulk Hogan his due. So he would sit in the back of the bus. He'd go, yeah, tall guy, blonde, big guy, tall guy, big muscles, and you'd be, you mean Hogan? Yeah, tall guy.
Yeah.
Come on, the guy made more money last year than you made in your entire career. He's packed more people in an auditorium than you've ever seen. You can't take away from him. So
Yeah.
I'm just focusing in on the fact that the reality of all this stuff is it's different.
Sure.
It's not my thing. When my brother first started with AEW, when AEW first started, I didn't watch it, and he, we talked on the phone. He said, "Did you watch?" I said, "Nah, I didn't have a chance." "You didn't watch it?" Okay, I'll watch it. So then I watched it. He said, "Well, what did you think?" I said, "Well, I didn't really like it." "What do you mean you didn't like it?" "Well, I didn't like it." I mean, I don't like. I like a story. I like the solidness of a good match, and not flipping and flopping in the gymnastics and the tremendous athleticism, but it's just not my deal. So
Certainly.
and he was a little irritated at the fact that I said that, but again, it's preference. What I didn't tell him was it's garbage.
Yeah.
It's not garbage. It's just not what I like.
Yep.
Well, and looking forward to here in just a couple weeks, we're going to have, oh my God, it's 2 weeks away now, isn't it? The National Wrestling Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa. There's going to be a show there, and that's that old school type of wrestling. We're going to have the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship on the line in Waterloo, the birthplace of the NWA. It's going to be a great event. It's going to be a great weekend, and you're going to get to meet all these people. My question for you, I've heard a lot about how you're involved with the Hall of Fame. What all do you do? What do you help with, and what have you done this year?
I mean, look, I'm not at the level of a lot of the people who are truly involved, like Jerry, for example. I mean, his involvement is at top tier kind of level. JBL, I really just show up. I mean, maybe I'll participate in signings, or they've had a couple training sessions where they brought guys in, who maybe wanted to train a little bit. We did that. We didn't have a great turnout for the one that we did, so we didn't end up doing it. Sometimes having training sessions within this weekend makes it tough. Sure. I've been part of some panel discussions where you get in front of fans and they talk to you about Florida wrestling, or want to learn whatever. So I participate in those. But I'm on the periphery of things. I'm not in that core group of people that really work the hall and help move it forward. I help with some funds, and I'll do my piece to support it because I think it's a great. And number one, I was a Dan Gable fanatic back in the day, so just that association with him makes it all worthwhile for me. And then it's just a great weekend. I mean, it's a more intimate setting than so many of the other fan fests and the gatherings that take place out there that tend to be just so big it loses something in translation. So I really enjoy going up there. And that's kind of it. I don't do much more than that.
Well, I do have to ask, because this year in particular, there's an inductee that your career reminds me a lot of, and we mentioned him earlier. That's Josh Barnett. Yeah. Do you have any sort of a personal connection to Josh, or an admirer of his work?
Well, I'm definitely an admirer of what and the reason I really wanted to introduce him, and the reason for that is because as a catch guy, as a submission guy that started with Karl, I owe him a little bit of gratitude, because what Josh really did was he grabbed the flag and kept waving it. Karl has since passed. Billy Robinson is gone. It took people to step up and grab that flag of catch wrestling and continue it out, and that's what Josh has done. A couple other guys out there who do a pretty good job at it. Eric Paulson is another one. If nothing else, I'm beholden to Josh for the fact that he really stepped up and has assisted in moving catch into as mainstream as it can get. Still not. It's not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because the Gracies were the ultimate marketers, but it is a very important part of the whole wrestling scene. In the United States, before Great Britain, and in particular Wigan, which is the town over there that catch was known, Wigan was known for catch. All this started in the United States decades before. With people in the carnivals, and having fights with other people to for money and stuff like that. That was all U.S. based. We just lost it. Eventually went over to England, and then people went over there and they learned, guys like Karl and Billy Robinson. They brought it back to the States. They brought it over to Japan. Karl really set his mark in Japan, where he became known as the god of wrestling, Kami-sama. But it was all catch wrestling and freestyle, but it was with catch involved and submissions. So now Josh has taken over that piece of it to keep it going. So I'm beholden to him for that. He's done a great job.
And have you caught any of this Josh Barnett's blood sports stuff that they do now?
I haven't seen. I mean, I've seen bits and pieces of it. I haven't really seen much of the blood sports stuff, but I'm busy.
No, I get it. No, absolutely. You're trying to save the world over there, and we're asking you about wrestling.
No, look, it's all. Hey, it's all part of my life. I mean, I can't focus on one thing, so I got to do 50 different things.
Yeah.
But the wrestling piece has always been a very important part of it. That's why I do the seminars, because I want to keep some of the foundational stuff out there that gets lost in the fray. Some of the basics of leveraging, having leverage and balance when you're on a mat, and how you do certain things, how you go for those submissions in ways in which you don't have to use a lot of strength. It's just knowing how body mechanics and how to do certain things that we've lost a bit of, because everybody just wants to be fancy. You don't need to be fancy. Sometimes fancy means that you open yourselves up to things that you don't want to. So I try and bring guys back to the core of catch and the basics of what Karl taught me in the day, because those never change, because they're based on the physical makeup of men. They're based on body mechanics. They're based on how you're built. It never changes. People lose sight of it because they want to do fancy stuff. They want to roll around and do things over the back and make everything look pretty. But when you do that on your on a mat, you tend to leave yourself open. So I'd rather just stay on top of a guy and have him carry my weight and have him blow up after a couple minutes just because he has 220 pounds on him and he can't move me.
That sounds like your way of fighting. That's good. For clarity for everybody, if they want to talk to you, if they want to see you in person, you're going to be at the George Tragos Luthez Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame weekend, correct?
Yes.
Well, boy, oh boy, isn't that exciting?
Yeah, it's right up there with diarrhea and other things. I don't know.
Hey, no, that's we're very excited to see you in person. That's going to be a great weekend. We'll be there July 9th, 10th, and 11th.
I wake up every morning excited to see me in person.
I believe that. I have no trouble believing that. That's great.
I take a mirror. I put the mirror under my nose just to make sure I leave a little.
Certainly, yeah. No, that's great. But yes, we will be there all 3 days of the Hall of Fame. Colt, do you have any final thoughts?
I appreciate your time, and I am looking forward to being able to sit and hopefully talk to you here during the Hall of Fame weekend. And everybody regardless of how big or small their roles have been throughout the years, I truly enjoy the stories, and especially like with you being able to grow up with all of these guys, whether you've worked with them or just been around them with the family and stuff. I think it's great, and I love hearing the stories. So,
well, we're doing a book. we're doing a book. Got my name of Jonathan Snowden, who's a pretty decent author. More than decent. Great writer. He did Ken Shamrock's book prior to this. Did some other stuff. So he's working on the Malenko family book, and he's actually researched a ton of stuff on my dad, where I now have some of the chapters in hand. Just beginnings of things.
Sure.
And I'm learning things about my dad's beginning, and his career at the start that I had no clue about, because when you're a kid, you don't ask a lot of questions, and Jonathan's really dug in. So the book's about, my dad, myself, my brother, kind of the Malenko legacy, and where we've been, what we've done, who we've influenced, the impact that we've had on the business. And I like it because it has my name on it.
Sure.
That's not going to be ready for...
Hopefully we sell 2 or 3 books. No, it won't be ready for Waterloo.
Okay.
It should be ready by the end of the year, so I'll have some books at the next event.
Yes.
From now.
Well,
I love it.
We're really looking forward to it. I mean, that's a couple books that we're looking forward to now.
was gonna
Tony
say.
Richards has a book coming out on Texas. And we've got Medusa said that she's going to have her book there. She was sure to plug the book
multiple times.
And
we're all whores. We're all
and now we got a Joe Malenko family book to look forward to. And so we'll also have to be sure to go back next year.
Absolutely.
That way we can go get the book from the man himself.
There you go.
We're really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for your time today, Joe. We really appreciate it. And do you have any final thoughts before we go?
None at all. I'm headed to do some coaching in the UK, and then I'm headed over to Italy. I've got a bunch of seminars overseas coming up this week. I'll leave tomorrow, and then when I get back, I'm going to take it easy for a little bit.
Well, what the hell are you letting us waste your time for?
I asked myself that this morning before I even got on the.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Appreciate you.
For Colt Powers, I've been Hunter Dietz, and this has been Between the Ropes, an On the Go Media podcast production.